Titan Technologies was located on the 50th floor of a skyscraper in downtown New York City. Designed with a modern architectural style, Titan's office reflected the wealth and power of one of the leading technology corporations. Sleek desks, contemporary art hanging on the walls, and large glass windows overlooking the bustling cityscape, this was where the most crucial decisions were made, where every employee was expected to maintain a perfect image. But this morning was different. An unexpected event took place here, altering not only the atmosphere in the office, but also deeper perspectives on society. Nathan Jackson walked into Titan's office with the confidence of a leader, a man who owned an empire, standing tall amidst the sea of competitors. He was a black man dressed in an expensive suit with neatly trimmed hair and resolute eyes. Every step he took seemed to assert the authority of someone who had risen from hardship to claim absolute power in the industry. Despite his phenomenal success, Nathan never forgot that his achievements were often met with doubt and prejudice, especially when he stepped into spaces where people did not expect someone like him to belong. Anna Richardson, the company's secretary, sat behind a large desk. Having worked at Titan for years, she was perhaps one of the people who knew the inner workings of the company best. With a cold demeanor, short cropped hair, and sharp eyes, Anna adhered to principles she believed were unchangeable. To her, this company operated on a clear hierarchy, where those at the top had to earn their positions. And that was why Nathan Jackson, a black man, could not possibly be the owner of this company, at least in her eyes. As Nathan entered, his confidence unsettled Anna in an inexplicable way. She couldn't stop thinking about him, not because of his striking appearance or leadership aura, but because his presence was something she couldn't quite understand. Anna looked up from her desk, her confused gaze landing on Nathan. She doubted him, and without hesitation, her skepticism was evident in her harsh stare. "Hello, I'm Nathan Jackson. I'm here to check on some matters within the company," Nathan said, his voice smooth yet commanding. He walked straight to Anna's desk. Anna didn't smile. She merely squinted at him, unable to comprehend why a man like him was here, in this space. "I don't see your name on today's appointment list," Anna said, her tone growing colder. "Are you sure you are who you claim to be? Or are you just some stranger trying to sneak in?" She pressed her lips tightly together and began looking intently at her computer, as though searching for a reason to dismiss Nathan's presence. Nathan smiled faintly, but his eyes grew serious. "I am the owner of this company, ma'am. My name is Nathan Jackson. I don't need an appointment to enter my own office." From Anna's expression, it was clear she didn't believe him. She stood up from her chair, her hands gripping the edge of the desk for balance as her eyes stayed fixed on Nathan. "The owner? This is a major corporation, and not just anyone can claim such a title without proper verification," Anna said, emphasizing the phrase, "not just anyone." She continued, "I don't see your name on any list. I think you should leave before I call security." A wave of anger surged within Nathan. He couldn't believe he had to justify his ownership to someone who was merely a secretary. The feeling of being insulted rose, but he kept his composure and calmly replied, "Ma'am, I am Nathan Jackson. This is my company, and I have no need to prove anything further." Anna was unrelenting. She turned, her eyes still locked on Nathan, and called out authoritatively, "Security! Come here!" Her voice echoed through the office's tense silence. Those nearby dared not speak, only sneaking glances and turning away as if they knew something was happening but didn't want to get involved. Within seconds, a large security guard appeared. His body was muscular, his sharp eyes clearly trained for situations like this. He stopped in front of Nathan, his expression filled with suspicion. "What's going on here?" he asked Anna. "This man claims to be the owner of the company, but I don't see his name on the visitor list," Anna said, her tone clipped. The guard looked Nathan up and down, visibly uncomfortable, but saying nothing. He stepped closer to Nathan, placing a hand on his shoulder, and said, "Please come with me outside. We don't allow anyone in without proper authorization." Nathan felt anger boiling within him. He was not only being insulted, but also treated as an outsider in a space he had built. Yet, in that moment, he knew that if he didn't control his emotions, the situation could quickly escalate. Swallowing the indignity, Nathan firmly replied, "This is a grave mistake. I am the owner of this company. Do not let prejudice and assumptions ruin everything. Nathan stood facing the security guard, his heart pounding in his chest. The feeling of insult surged within him, but he was determined to maintain his composure. Anna's words echoed in his mind. Are you sure you are who you claim to be? Those words felt like a slap in the face, a stark reminder of the prejudice he had endured for years. But this time, he would not remain silent. The guard stood there, his eyes fixed on Nathan as if waiting for a cue to act. He said nothing, merely gesturing for Nathan to follow him. It seemed he was accustomed to situations like this, dealing with people who supposedly didn't belong in spaces like this company. But Nathan had reached his limit. She doesn't know who I am, and now you don't either, Nathan said, his voice cold and unwavering. He looked the guard straight in the eye, with no intention of backing down. I am Nathan Jackson, the owner of this company, and I will not leave until this matter is resolved. The guard frowned, unconvinced. He glanced at Anna, waiting for her directive. Anna remained at her desk, her eyes glued to the computer screen, seemingly indifferent to the tension unfolding. She typed away, her face blank, but her mind raced with the events that had just transpired. She couldn't believe what Nathan had said. How could it be? A black man dressed impeccably, claiming to be the owner of this company? It was beyond her comprehension. Did you hear what I just said? Nathan continued, his voice sharper now. I don't need to prove who I am to anyone, but if you insist, I can show you all the necessary documents. He reached into his wallet, pulling out a certificate of ownership, and handed it to the guard. Anna showed no sign of backing down. She shook her head, refusing to even glance at the document. Security, she ordered, her voice icy. Escort him out immediately. We don't allow unauthorized individuals in here. Nathan felt his anger boiling over. Every word Anna spoke was a jab at his dignity. How could she treat him like this? He took a deep breath, trying to rein in his emotions. This wasn't the first time he had encountered racism, but this time he couldn't let it slide. The guard stepped closer, placing a hand on Nathan's shoulder, not with excessive force, but enough to assert authority. Let's go, he said flatly. Nathan stared the guard down, unflinching. Do you even realize what you're doing? He asked, his tone calm but laced with indignation. You're throwing a man out of the company he owns because of one reason. I'm black. Nathan's words hit both Anna and the guard like a hammer. They froze for a second, unsure how to respond. But the silence didn't last long. Anna finally looked up at Nathan, her eyes now blazing with anger. Don't lecture me with that, she snapped. I'm just doing my job. If you're really the owner, I don't need to hear your moral sermon about racism. She emphasized the word racism as if defending her actions. Nathan looked at her, a wave of powerful emotions surging within him. He couldn't believe she could utter those words while standing face to face with blatant prejudice and disrespect. You don't understand, he said, his voice tinged with frustration. This isn't just about ownership. It's about dignity and respect, and you've shown me neither. Anna said nothing more. She turned her back on him and walked away from her desk, leaving Nathan standing there with the weight of the world seemingly against him. The guard maintained his distance, unsure whether to take further action, but Nathan knew the silence in the office wasn't peace. It was apathy, complicity. The people around him continued to steal glances, some looking surprised, others quickly turning away. They stood by, watching, but no one dared to intervene. This was the silence of injustice. If you think I'm going to give up, you're mistaken, Nathan said softly, but loud enough for those nearby to hear. This isn't over. The atmosphere in Titan's office was suffocating. Every eye, from employees to managers, was fixed on Nathan and Anna, as if everyone could feel the tension and injustice unfolding. Silence blanketed the space, broken only by the sound of the security guard's footsteps and the strained breaths of those witnessing the scene. No one dared to speak. Nathan stood tall, his eyes locked on Anna. He felt the weight of the prejudice he was facing, but this time he couldn't remain silent. He had endured enough. Anger rose within him, but he fought to keep it in check, refusing to let his emotions take over. The security guard moved closer, gripping Nathan's shoulder with a firm hand. Come with me, he said gruffly, his tone laced with authority. Nathan stared directly at the guard, unwavering. I'm not going anywhere, he replied sharply. She doesn't know who I am, and neither do you. The guard furrowed his brow, disbelief etched on his face. He glanced at Anna, waiting for her direction, but she stood still, her cold eyes unflinching. The tension continued to mount. She doesn't understand, Nathan said, his gaze now piercing. She doesn't see me for who I am, but I am the owner of this company. The guard hesitated, unsure of his next move. He looked back at Anna, but she remained silent, rigid in her denial of the truth. Nathan's anger simmered as he faced her indifference. Do you think I'll allow myself to be thrown out so easily? Nathan continued, his voice low and commanding. At that moment, the CEO emerged from the conference room, his face filled with concern. What the hell is going on here? He demanded, his voice a mix of confusion and authority. He quickly glanced at the security guard before turning to Nathan, his expression shifting to one of astonishment. The guard looked at the CEO, struggling to hide his uncertainty. He says he's the owner of the company, but I didn't recognize him. The CEO froze, then turned to Nathan, his eyes widening in recognition. You're Nathan Jackson? He asked, his voice laced with shock. Nathan gave a slight nod, his expression calm but resolute. He was accustomed to being doubted. Yes, he said firmly. I am Nathan Jackson, the owner of Titan Technologies. A long, heavy silence followed. Anna, who had stood motionless, now began to sense the shift in the room. Her once steely gaze wavered, replaced by confusion and unease. She stood frozen, unable to reconcile the reality unfolding before her. The CEO turned to Anna, disappointment evident in his eyes. What have you done? He asked, his voice low and stern. Anna said nothing. She felt as though she had stumbled into a nightmare she couldn't escape. Nathan's words were a harsh slap to the rigid worldview she had clung to. She couldn't admit her mistake, yet she couldn't deny that she had treated Nathan as an outsider purely because of the color of his skin. The other employees, watching from a distance, remained silent. Each of them was acutely aware that they had just witnessed a pivotal moment, not just in Anna's humiliation, but in their own complicity. Their silence during the ordeal spoke volumes. The CEO turned back to Nathan, his face etched with regret. We're deeply sorry. This is a grave mistake, and we'll do everything we can to make it right. Nathan gave a curt nod, his expression unyielding. An apology changes nothing. She needs to learn to treat others with respect, he said, his gaze still fixed on Anna. His piercing eyes were like daggers, and Anna couldn't meet them. She couldn't comprehend how she had become part of a system of prejudice she believed had no place in this company. The security guard stood silently, unsure of what to do. He looked at Nathan, then back at the CEO, waiting for further instructions. But no one spoke. Nathan turned and walked out of the room without a word of farewell. He strode forward without looking back. Meanwhile, Anna stood rooted to the spot, as if crushed by the weight of an undeniable truth. She felt a deep sense of failure and shame, but knew she couldn't undo what had been done. Titan's office, often a world detached from outside disruptions, had irrevocably changed today. The tension lingered, and the once neutral or indifferent gazes of employees now held unease and introspection. They knew they had just witnessed a pivotal moment, a moment that laid bare the deep-seated injustices embedded in the company's foundation. Nathan had left the office, but his story was far from over. This was not the end. The CEO stood frozen, his eyes still fixed on the spot where Nathan had disappeared. The shock of what had transpired hadn't subsided. He turned back to Anna, the source of all the chaos that had erupted. Disappointment, shame, and anger were etched across his face. Anna, do you realize what you've done? He asked, his words clipped and his tone sharp with disapproval. Anna couldn't respond. She stood there, arms limp at her sides, her eyes vacant. She knew she had made an unforgivable mistake. She had always prided herself on being a principled employee, yet now she felt the crushing weight of realizing that she had been deceived by her own deep-seated prejudices. No one in the office was working anymore. Everyone stood still, their conversations long silenced, unwilling to meet Anna's gaze. They had seen it all, how she had treated Nathan and the prejudice she had inadvertently put on display. The CEO took a deep breath, trying to suppress his anger. This cannot continue. This company cannot thrive in an environment tainted by discrimination like this. Anna remained motionless, a shadow of herself, unable to say a word. She knew that no apology could undo what had happened. All she could do now was confront her mistakes and accept the consequences. The security guard, who had also participated in escorting Nathan out, now felt he had crossed a line. He stood frozen, avoiding the CEO's gaze, realizing that his actions had not only hurt Nathan but also eroded his own sense of integrity. What what do you think of what just happened? The guard finally asked, his voice hesitant and unfamiliar, as though even he struggled to process his role in the incident. The CEO looked at him, then scanned the room, his gaze settling on everyone present. We cannot allow this to happen again. It's an affront to every value this company claims to uphold. Everyone here needs to understand that racism has no place, under any circumstances. The office fell into a deeper silence. No one dared speak, for they all knew that the situation had spiraled too far. The long simmering biases within the company had now been laid bare, forcing everyone to confront uncomfortable truths and face the inevitable consequences. Meanwhile, Nathan was already outside the company, the anger still simmering in his heart. But he knew that his fight wasn't just for himself. It was for everyone like him, those unfairly judged and treated because of the color of their skin. One thing was clear to him: this company needed to change, and he would be the catalyst for that change. Nathan's footsteps echoed through the empty hallway of the building, each step a declaration. He wasn't just standing up for himself, he was standing for all those marginalized, silenced, and excluded. His heart brimmed with emotion, but it wasn't just anger, it was resolve. He knew one thing for certain: this battle was just beginning. The day after, Titan's office no longer held its usual calm and order. Whispered conversations, furtive glances, and a heavy silence filled the air. No one could forget the previous day's events, a moment when a man faced blatant racism in his own workplace. The office seemed collectively stunned, yet no one dared to speak up. They waited for those in authority to take action. Anna sat at her desk, her vacant eyes fixed on the computer screen. She hadn't slept the previous night, consumed by guilt. She couldn't believe how she had treated Nathan, a man she had dismissed as a stranger simply because of the color of his skin. Her words, her defiance, and her indifference to him replayed in her mind like a nightmare she couldn't escape. Looking at herself in the mirror earlier, shame washed over her. Anna had always prided herself on being principled, doing the right thing, and never faltering. But now, she realized that she had been complicit in a system of racial prejudice she had never even recognized. Her self-respect lay shattered in pieces. The CEO entered the office, his face still etched with seriousness. He walked straight to Anna's desk, where she sat quietly. Silence enveloped them before he spoke. "Anna, do you understand the gravity of what happened?" the CEO asked, his tone stern but tinged with concern. Anna turned to face him, unable to meet his eyes. I I don't know what came over me. I can't believe I acted that way." The CEO sighed, lowering his head briefly before speaking again. "This isn't just about what happened yesterday. This is a deeper issue, and this company cannot sustain itself in an environment where such discrimination is tolerated. It's not just you. Every one of us needs to reflect on our actions and how we treat others." Anna felt as though a weight was crushing her chest. The CEO's words cut straight to the heart of her mistakes. She had no defense for her behavior. No reasoning, no explanation could justify what she had done. "The company will issue an official statement about this," the CEO continued, "and you will need to take responsibility. But first, you owe Nathan an apology, not just for yesterday, but for failing to see what you should have all along." Anna stood, her hands trembling. "I'll do whatever it takes to make things right," she said, her voice breaking. "But I know that an apology can't undo what's been done." The CEO nodded, his gaze filled with both disappointment and a glimmer of hope. An apology is the first step, but what matters more is that you understand and change. This entire company needs to change. Meanwhile, Nathan sat in a small cafe, the dim light casting soft shadows on the table before him. He couldn't stop thinking about what had happened at the company the previous day. Anger still lingered, but he knew that anger alone would accomplish nothing. He needed to keep fighting, not just for himself, but for everyone who had suffered from racism and lacked a voice in a world where skin color dictated so much. Nathan's eyes drifted to the window, watching the bustling street outside where people continued their hurried lives. He knew his battle wasn't confined to one company. It was a long fight, one that sought to reshape society's views and treatment of others. Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a message from the CEO of Titan. Nathan, we've had discussions and would like to meet with you tomorrow. Anna wants to apologize and is willing to do whatever it takes to make amends. We want to make things right. Nathan didn't reply immediately. He stared at the message, considering its implications. Could apologies alone undo what had been done? Could Anna and the company truly change from within, or were these just empty gestures? He placed his phone back on the table, his gaze returning to the window. The weight of the journey ahead pressed heavily on him. There was no turning back, no giving up. The next day, Nathan walked into Titan's conference room with a contemplative demeanor. He had mentally prepared for this meeting, but doubt lingered in his heart. An apology from Anna and the company couldn't easily erase the wounds he had endured over the years. Still, this was a first step. He needed to see if they genuinely wanted to change or if this was merely a performative gesture. The spacious conference room was illuminated by natural light streaming through large glass windows. The long tables were neatly arranged, and the atmosphere was unusually heavy. Across from Nathan sat the CEO, his face tense. Anna sat in a corner, avoiding Nathan's gaze. Silence hung in the room until the CEO spoke. Nathan, thank you for coming. I know yesterday's events were unacceptable, and we fully acknowledge our mistakes. Anna wanted to meet with you and personally apologize for what happened. The CEO's voice carried gravity and sincerity. He seemed anxious, not just about yesterday's incident, but about the significant changes the company would need to undergo. Anna kept her gaze fixed on the table, unable to lift her head. She knew that what had happened couldn't be undone with a simple apology. Still, she had resolved to do this, no matter how difficult it was. Nathan, Anna began, her voice hoarse. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I acted wrongly, and I have no excuse. I judged you unfairly because of the color of your skin, and I deeply regret it. Her words, though simple, carried all the sincerity she could muster. Yet Nathan didn't respond immediately. He listened, but doubt still clouded his mind. Anna's apology might be a first step, but would she and the company truly change, or were these merely empty words meant to pacify the situation? The CEO looked at Nathan, his eyes filled with hope. We're not stopping at this apology. We recognize that there's a deeper issue in how we work and treat each other here at the company. We're committed to change, and we hope you can help us in this process. Nathan looked at the CEO, then at Anna. His gaze held neither anger nor immediate forgiveness. He knew that real change couldn't come from words alone. It required time and commitment from everyone involved. If you truly want to change, Nathan said, his voice steady and resolute, I'm willing to help, but I need to see action, not just promises. Anna nodded, understanding the truth in his words. She was no longer the person she had been yesterday, and she knew she needed to learn, to change, and to treat others with fairness and respect. The CEO stood and walked over to Nathan. We will start immediately. This is an opportunity for us to rebuild a fair and equitable company free from discrimination. Nathan stood and looked directly at the CEO. Make sure your words align with your actions. I won't do this alone. You all need to commit fully and change from the ground up, not just on the surface. This meeting was not the end of the story. It was merely the first step in a long journey ahead. Titan Technologies and everyone within it would face significant challenges, but this was their chance to create meaningful change and build an equitable workplace where racism had no place. As Nathan left the conference room, he felt slightly lighter, but he knew the battle ahead would be far from easy. Still, he carried his determination and commitment with him. He would continue the fight, not just for himself, but for all those like him, people overlooked and marginalized by society. A week had passed since the pivotal meeting with Nathan, and during that time, Titan Technologies had begun implementing major changes. The CEO and senior management set out to overhaul hiring and training processes, focusing on eradicating all forms of racism within the company. Workshops on equity and diversity were organized to raise awareness and educate employees about social issues. Anna participated in these workshops and felt a palpable shift within herself. The deep discussions helped her recognize the biases she had carried unconsciously for so long. Each session wasn't just about work, but about reevaluating how she viewed others, not by their appearances, but by their true worth. One afternoon, as she sat in her office, Anna gazed out the window at the bustling street below, sensing a gentle change within her. She told herself she could never go back to the person she was before, and she didn't want to. She wanted to change, to continue learning and growing into a better person. Yet, this newfound awareness couldn't fully assuage her regret over what had happened. Meanwhile, Nathan had returned to the company to oversee the changes. He worked not only with the CEO and senior leadership, but also participated in the workshops, sharing his experiences to help others better understand the racism he had endured. Each time he stood before a group, he didn't just recount his personal story, but inspired others, reminding them that real change required commitment from every individual, starting with the smallest actions. One day, as Nathan entered the office, the CEO called him for a meeting. The CEO stood at a table covered with thick stacks of documents. His face no longer carried the worry or disappointment of the past, but instead a determined and resolute expression. Nathan, the CEO began, we've made some initial progress, but there's still a lot of work to do. I want you to know this company is genuinely changing. We've started implementing new policies on diversity and inclusion, and I believe we can continue driving these changes forward. Nathan nodded, sensing the sincerity in the CEO's words. He knew these changes couldn't happen overnight, but the company had taken important first steps. It's a good start, Nathan replied firmly, but I want to see action. A company only changes when its leaders genuinely commit to reevaluating how they treat and perceive their employees. The CEO smiled, agreeing, absolutely, and I'm committed to ensuring we see this through until every employee feels respected and treated fairly. After the meeting, Nathan returned to his office feeling a slight sense of relief, but he also knew the road ahead would be long. True transformation would require more than just corporate reforms. It would depend on individuals and their everyday actions. The next day, Anna came to see Nathan. She hesitated outside his office door before knocking. When Nathan gestured for her to enter, she stepped inside with a tentative smile. Hello, Nathan, Anna said, trying to keep her voice steady. Nathan looked at her, noticing the change in her demeanor. Hello, Anna, he replied, offering a small smile. What's on your mind? Anna sat down, her hands trembling slightly. I know I hurt you and everyone else who has faced discrimination in this company. I want to apologize again, not just for how I acted, but for not realizing how deeply my actions could affect others. Nathan didn't respond immediately. He looked at her quietly before saying, Your apology is meaningful, he said after a moment, but more important is proving that you've truly changed. You'll need to keep learning, not just from workshops, but through your actions. Anna nodded, her eyes brightening slightly. I understand, and I will work on this, not just for the company, but for myself. I don't want to be the person I was.